I want to tell you, how did I get to ceramics? How did I find myself as a creative? And yeah. So back in 2017, I moved from Brazil to Australia. And I came with no plans. The only thing that I wanted was learn how to speak English and see what life was holding for me. It was very open-ended. And happened that I was living in a shared house, and a housemate's sister came from Brazil, and she was a ceramicist, and she invited me to go to the ceramic studio to have a look. And I mentioned to her I was quite interested on the ceramics in Australia because they looked very different from what ceramics look in Brazil. So I went to visit the ceramicist, and as I got there, she was on the wheel throwing, and I was like, oh wow, I really want to learn that. And she said, well, there's a workshop starting tonight and someone is sick, so there's one spot. I was like, I'm in. And that was the beginning for me. So I have never touched clay before, which is quite interesting to think because so many people get to experience clay at high school or things as such. So for me, it was the first time. Went to this first workshop, got there a bit late because I needed to drop that friend back home. And as I got there, Brooke, which was my teacher back then, gave me a little VIP show how. And then as I started, she's like, oh, wow, have you touched clay before? I was like, well, maybe past lives. And that was the beginning of it. I was hooked. Left the workshop, covered in clay, head to toe, and in love with it. Was once a week for 4 weeks, and that was my beginner journey. Once it finished, I was so in love that I kept going to that studio, which was actually just a clay supply. They didn't have ongoing classes, but I got a chance of going on 1 day a week where I could rent one of the wheels and practice. So I started doing that. But because I was a student and working, I didn't have much free time. So I decided to buy some clay to start practicing at home. And that was the beginning of my journey with ceramics. So it was slow, yet I was intense and I was passionate about it straight up. And what happened was I didn't have many resources. I didn't have much support into the sense of I couldn't quite set up a studio back then. I was just renting houses. So I just found my way around it. And hand building became my way around it because I didn't have a wheel. And if you are wheel throwing, you do need a wheel. So in that way, I started buying clay and making things at home and practice. And it was lots of trial and errors in this process. But eventually, a friend of mine saw an ad to work in a ceramic studio. And I went there and I started what would be an internship, which could also be kind of slavery because I was working for free 2 days a week, learning a lot, but making no money. But anyway, that was crucial on my development as a ceramic artist because this lady who I was working with for free or who I was an apprentice of, she worked with ceramics without glaze. She had a very unique and specific style where she finished it really well and she sagafire it with natural materials. So the color of these natural materials like macadamia shells, egg shells, or snake skin would imprint into the ceramic body and create these crazy patterns. So I learned a lot about how to finish a ceramic piece without a glaze to a high level. And that was very important for me later on because I personally never really loved glazes. In the beginning of my journey, I tried glazes a lot, but never really got to something that I was like, oh, wow, that's incredible. But fast forward a little bit, started making my own pieces. I was working in a restaurant as a barista, just pouring some coffees, and happened that they knew that I was making ceramics and they invited me to, or offered me to make some little plates, like dessert plates for this restaurant. And that was a wow moment for me because it was a really nice restaurant in this region that I am near Byron Bay. So then I did. And that was this slow start, and gradually I kept like making more and making some cups and just little pieces, but I was so in love with it. That was filling up my cup so much. Even though I was making no money out of it, it brought me so much joy. And this journey of being patient with ceramics and learning and being patient and learning as well, that just kept like me on, basically. And then I got another job later on because I quit this apprenticeship after a few months, wasn't really flowing, and I felt like I wasn't gaining much more skills because I was just doing these shit jobs, really shit jobs, like sending and lots of sending and sending. And I was like, well, I learned enough here. I'm not working for free like that anymore. And then I got a few other little paid jobs in other studios, which were also really helpful at the time, more to find out what I didn't want to do than what I did want to do. But anyway, it helped me in my journey and in my path. Then I kept making, got to sell some of my pieces in a deli, which was connected to the restaurant that I was working, and always talking with people because I was really in love with it. So people would ask me what has been happening, and all what I could talk about was ceramics because I was in love with it. And then fast forward a little bit, I met my partner, and he knew that I was in love with it, and we ended up living together. And then I brought all my little things, because that was one thing, like we were already living together, was not say official. And gradually I brought my things in, we made it official, and he made me a studio. And that was officially when I got out of little bits of space or a garage into a little studio. And because he is awesome, he set the studio up. He set up the studio for me like in such a beautiful way. He made me these shelves, and we had a little sink. My first wheel came, which was really exciting. But back then I was already so into hand building that the wheel became just one extra accessory on my practice. But after having this studio and making for a while, my kiln arrived. And then that made a big official moment of like, okay, I'm taking this thing seriously, because a kiln is an investment, and now I have the missing piece of the puzzle to make my journey official. And then once the kiln arrived, I started firing my pieces, and around a month after that, the kiln was like on and off, straight up, was cooling down, back up, because I had made so many pieces on this waiting for the kiln, hundreds of plates and cups, because at the time it was very much functional wear for me. Once 1 month from that, I took the leap of faith of letting go of my little coffee job and going all in into ceramics. And I made the first ceramic open studio, got some people in, sold some pieces, got some connections. Was a really good like debut of my work. It was a very different style from what is now in a way. But still, if you look at my older pieces, you can see the essence of my style in them. And that was the beginning of it. From that, I got some orders, some people got in touch, and I just kept going, kept posting everything online, because I always really loved taking pictures. And back then, Instagram was a different thing altogether anyway. But in that way of just sharing my practice and putting my work out there, I got one of my biggest commissions back then, which was making over 100 plates for this really cool restaurant in Melbourne. And that was a technique that came just organically. I was then working with black and white clay. And I never really loved glazes that much, as I mentioned, and happened that one day I was recycling my black and white clay, and some beautiful patterns started showing up. And from that, I was like, oh, wow, there's something in it. It really looked like a piece of art, on the sense of you would look at that plate and you would get lost into it, because people would see birds and waves and like all sorts of things, like in an abstract-like kind of way. So then I made these pieces and started sharing, and they took beautiful pictures of the plates with food and all of that. And it happened again that via Instagram, I got another message from someone from Canada. saying, hey, I would love to buy some of your pieces and sell in my shop here. And that was when I was like, oh, wow, this thing is really taking off, like, because getting an overseas order of that size was really cool. So I started making for this brand that's called Obaki, and Trian, that is the owner, was amazing. We had this 1 hour video call and we connected, and that was the beginning of our relationship. And then I kept working with her, sending these big batches, which also allow me to learn a lot about how to pack my ceramics to send them overseas with a really, really high achievement of not breaking the pieces. So that was a great skill back then that I can also share with everyone. And so like that kept going. But then I felt pregnant, had a little bit of a break from it because it's really challenging to make ceramics and having a baby that needs you all the time, because as you know, or maybe you don't know, but ceramics really need some time to rest. And it needs to be looked after at times when it needs to be looked after, so as a baby. So with that, in that time, my practice reduced a little bit the time that I had, basically, but that was totally fine with me. But going back just a little bit before is when I actually had my baby, my first boy, Louis, right after giving birth to him, which was a natural birth, I had these visions. And it was something really crazy. To me, it brings me back to experiences that I had when I had ayahuasca. I had these very vivid dreams after giving birth to him, and I was making vases already. I was in this transition from functional wear to more like objects that could be a decoration, but also functional and all of that. So I already had more or less developed my shapes with the ceramics, and I saw this blue. Because since the very beginning, when I started, I bought all the blue glazes, all the blue underglazes, everything that you can imagine on the glaze side of things, because I really wanted that blue. But I saw with my mind's eye, and I'm like, okay, if I saw it, I can make it happen. So right after having Louis, I started trialing all sorts of things. And through this process, I developed what now is called Color Secrets, which is my unique way of creating bold, matte colors. And that was a really cool moment. It took me a while on trialing, and my time was limited, but I was so certain that I could get to that. And I did it. And it was really interesting because I had signed up to be on 1,000 vases. And I was sending my black and white collection because that's what I had. They were beautiful pieces. But the day that DHL was coming to pick up the 3 pieces that I made for 1,000 vases, I opened my kiln with my very first batch of Color Secrets pieces. And that was such a synchronicity. So it was really hard for me to choose 3 pieces because I was in love with all of them. But I decided to go for, I think it was a red one, a teal, and a blue. And happened that my pieces were put right on the window of 1,000 vases. And that brought such awareness to my brand, to my work. And that was a real mark of my Instagram growth, which I'm not sure if I mentioned in this video, but for me, everything really happened organically via Instagram. I just keep sharing what I'm doing, what I'm up to, my work, and Instagram has been this platform where people can connect, can see, and if they have interest, they come and buy my work. So that was the beginning of a big turning point. And from there on, I kept getting like orders, commissions, and I did like lots of wholesale with brands from all over the planet, which was wild. And from there on, I was really, really busy with a list of things to create, of things to make. And what happened, because I was responding to that demand in such hype, I didn't notice that I was getting myself out of my creative freedom because everyone was coming to me and saying, hey, I want a piece of that size in that color. So I was just really making to that list. And that gradually, over a couple of years, really killed my creative flow, because it felt like I wasn't quite free to create whatever I wanted. I was just making to order. But I'll develop on that later on. Anyway, Colored Secrets was really like, I created a color collection and had my first exhibition, had a second exhibition, everything was just in flow. And then after a while, as I said, I really felt like I wasn't really being authentic anymore. I wasn't really expressing myself, even though I kept refining the work and the pieces were getting better and better in all areas and things that are more or less very nuanced, that probably just I could see the difference, but they were improving. I just got to a point that I felt like I was doing it wrong, and I had lost my desire of making, and I felt like I got really creatively blocked. And for over a year, I would start work and I wouldn't go back to finish. I had orders to finish and they were taking way longer than what would take me. It was a very weird time for me. I can't really put my finger if it was very much the sense that I was making to order and wasn't feeling free, or if it was other reasons, or if it was because I was pregnant again and these hormones were changing me, or a bit of everything altogether. But what happened was, I thought about giving up on ceramics. It just wasn't happening. It was really weird. And I tried painting, I tried canvas, I tried all sorts of things to see if I could bring myself back into that creative flow, into that excitement that I so loved and I so seek, that used to get me up for the day, so excited to what I had to create and all of that. And got to a point that I was like, I'm not sure what I'll do. And I realized that I've been asked so many times about how do I get the colors as I get? How do I do? And I noticed that I always kept my secrets really close to me, and no one would ever be able to figure out my secrets on how the colors come to life unless I told them. And I was like, well, why I don't then just teach the technique that I developed, since I'm not even thinking of using it as much anymore. And I got to a point where I feel like I really mastered it. There's nothing else that I can do to evolve this technique like one more layer. So maybe as well I teach. But then talking to camera became at that thing. I was like, oh, do I want to do that? You know, I don't really love talking to camera. My English kind of sucks. And yeah, anyway, I was like, okay, I don't have anything to lose anyway. I'm thinking of quitting. So why not? So I started with creating an ebook, and that really helped me to take things out of my mind and make it a bit clear, because I noticed that as a creative mind, I have many ideas, and most of the time it feels more like a brainstorming mind than an objective mind. But anyway, I created this ebook, made sense. I was like, okay, I'm gonna record it. And recording was so hard. So every video that I would make, I would sit to watch, and I would, okay, look, I'm saying everything wrong. I know better. Why am I, when I'm recording, sounding so weird? And anyway, I was very judgmental of myself. And now, as you probably can notice, there are lots of little mistakes. My accent might be a bit different, but I learned how to accept myself as I am. That's who I am. If you're meeting with me on the streets, that's what you're gonna get. If you come to my studio, that's what you're gonna get. So there's no way that I'm gonna be absolutely perfect on camera unless I'm cutting and editing, and that's not something that I'm willing to do, because it is what it is. That's who I am. Welcome. This is me. But anyway, so then the first course came up, and I thought, well, maybe if it goes really well, 30 people can sign up. So I put it out, I made a little launch campaign, and I was really surprised by the number of people that signed up. And I was even more surprised by the number of people that sent me the most beautiful feedback back. I was like, oh, wow, that's really, really cool. And like, I got the most beautiful messages from people saying how much it transformed their lives and their practice and how it changed. And I was like, oh, wow. I felt actually quite selfish before that I didn't share it before, because I thought like, wow, I unlocked the access to all these colors and like all of that, and I'm keeping it just for me. That's so crazy. And now sharing it with everyone and seeing what everyone has been creating has been so fulfilling. It goes to a whole other level when I see people creating work and sending me pictures, or I see on their social media. It's just so cool. And then with all this process, I've been invited to go overseas to teach. And this in-person experience was very fulfilling too. Looking eye to eye and connecting with people and seeing their challenges. And I feel like since I did the in-person workshops in Lebanon and in Canada, I learned a lot about my own teaching style and how I can really improve and teach even better. And I felt that there was a big lack with having a course that you have access, you do in your own time, and you go there, but you are alone after. But you could email me. But then I got so many emails, and so many times I was responding very similar things. And all these people didn't have a place to connect, to share. And that's how the community came to life. And like, I think now with all of that, from no idea about ceramics, studying ceramics, finding my style, developing my own techniques with the colors and the hand building, finding my way to express my authenticity online, getting financially successful with ceramics, expanding into a teaching journey, and noticing that this teaching journey is opening another door, which is something that before didn't come clear to me. But I am a natural rule breaker. I don't like following rules. So I always was told that the colors that I wanted were impossible. That hand building as I do was impossible. That having a ceramic practice where you can be financially successful or being an artist and being financially free would be impossible. And all these things, I'm like, nah, I'm gonna find my way through it. And it took me a long time. There were lots of mistakes. I'm a kind of person that I like exploring, I like experimenting. I have no problem with things going wrong, even though sometimes they go really wrong and it sucks. But I know that as time passes later on, it will make sense. And one thing that I think I forgot mentioning, on this Instagram journey of people getting in touch with me, one of the most mind-blowing ones was Cartier. One day I was looking at my spam messages and I had a message there from my contact, which I won't mention his name, but he messaged me saying that he was from Cartier and he would like to talk to me about commissioning some pieces. And I remember that I think Louis was 6 months old or something like that. Sorry. And I saw this message and I turned to my partner and said, hey, is Cartier the good brand or not? I wasn't even sure if Cartier was the good brand or not. And I went research and was like, oh, wow. They are all about things that are curated, made with talented hands. And it felt so aligned. And then I met him on one of my exhibitions. And from there on, we have this ongoing relationship, which to me is just a representation of this authenticity and this level of uniqueness that you see in my work that got to this point. And I got to this moment now where I feel like I have so much to share. And I'm always sharing with people informally, but I feel like this informal way, it's hard for someone that's coming with no knowledge about a topic, whether it's photography, ceramics, business, whatever that is. I have always so much to share, but never in a way that I feel like can create a huge transformation. Because when you're getting introduced to a new topic, something new in your knowledge, on your toolbox, you need a bit more time. You need it to be a bit more didactic to really get in. And I think that's really how now I found what I'm feeling like is this perfect spot. Is a room where you have the classroom and where you have the community, so we all can connect. And all this knowledge that I gather and I keep developing over the years can be shared in a way that makes sense. So yeah, I think I started as a curious person, then I found ceramics, then I found myself, then I developed myself, then as I created the course, I started accepting myself better. And now I figure out that I'm ready to share and I'm ready to be here for you, to be available and to expand myself as we all grow and expand together in our creative journeys. Because being creatively free has been the most powerful thing that ever happened to me. And I know that when I am in this creative vibration, when I'm in my creative flow, I am a better version of myself. It impacts all areas of my life. And I just figure out that I cannot live without my creativity. And it gets in all areas, basically, like from how I cook, to how I dress, to how I move, to how I communicate. And I really want that to spread in between all of us, because even though I feel like I got to a level that is super consistent, I feel like it keeps increasing and new layers unfold, and it's just ever growing and ever evolving. And that's what I love the most about this creative practice, is how we learn about ourselves, how we change, how we evolve, and how we get that feeling of, I'm so proud of something that I created with my hands. And with technology coming so strong these days, going back to something that gets us into flow, that we make with our hands, that we visualize with our mind's eyes, and we go back to that near ancestral way of creating, is just, there's nothing that replaces that. And yet I use technology a lot. AI is by my side to create many things, but the essence, the core, and the creativity is mine. And that's really powerful. And yeah, anyway, I think there's more to come. There are stories that didn't come to this introduction, but on and on. That's how I started my ceramic journey and how I got here. And yeah, I hope to see you in another video, that you see me in the other video, and let me know if there's anything else that you'd like to know about my journey, or if anything wasn't clear and you want to ask, please feel free, and see you soon.